I'm a fan, like we all are. So, here, before I begin, yes, it was true, the news came in. The book, the pub date was last Tuesday, so it's been out for 8 days. And we found out that we debuted in the top 10 of the New York Times bestseller list. So, I am so happy right now, I don't even know what to do. And here's the weirdest part about it, and then we're going to do something fun with this phone. Does anybody know, well, you all know the book because you're book people. I directed the movie version of the book Wonder. You all know Wonder? Yes. So there's a part when Jack Will is remembering his friendship with Augie and wondering why Augie won't talk to him anymore, where Augie kind of does a goofy face behind this cubist painting by, I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but like Wong Gri. And so I'm on pins and needles for hours today, just walking around the Art Institute of Chicago, looking at all these wonderful paintings and going, I don't know if we're going to make it. It's Margaret Atwood, it's Stephen King. I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. You know, it's my first book in 20 years, and I swear to God, this is what happened. So imagine this. So here we go. So I come up here, and I walk around like this, and I'm like this, and I turn, and there's a painting that I put in the movie. I've never seen it live before. And I thought, and I remember in an instant what it was like right before the Wonder movie came out, and not knowing if people would like it, not knowing if it would do well critically, not knowing if people would buy tickets, you never know. And it reminded me what it felt like, and this instant feeling of calm went over me. And I thought, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but if you do the things that you believe in, let's, we'll see what happens. Whatever happens, it's going to be fine. And then I'm walking, and then I look at it, and I'm feeling very moved, and I turn, and the phone rings in my pocket, and they answer my phone, and I'm like, hello? And it's my editor, Wes, and he said, congratulations. And I will not lie, I'm not going to pretend that I didn't burst into tears. Right there in the Art Institute of Chicago. It's been 20 years, and anyway. So, you have me on a very special good mood night. Like, I'm usually in a good mood, but this is like, you can ask me anything tonight. All right, so this is what we're going to do because my only regret about this evening is that I cannot have my beautiful wife Liz with me because she's with our 7 and 4-year-old back home in Los Angeles. So, before I start tonight's reading, what I want to do, so I'm going to hold this up and then I'm going to go like this. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to point, and you're going to say, hi, Liz, and then you're going to applaud, okay? And this is the only way that I can bring my wonderful wife with me on tour. So here we go. You ready? All right.
Hi, Liz!
So that is my tradition on this tour, because when I get home, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to walk in the door, and she's going to take our 2 children and go, here. Anyway, you just made her a little less mad at me. Okay, so what I'm going to do, mostly tonight will be a Q&A, but I will say, so, all right, so this is my new book, my first book in 20 years, Imaginary Friend. And thank you very much. And although I actually think it is a very interesting, shall we say, sibling to Perks of Being a Wallflower in terms of the themes that I'm dealing with, certain ideas about trauma, certain ideas about mental illness, and things like very, very similar themes, approach to character. I love heart first, but it is a scary book. It is a horror novel. And I wanted to write a novel that was equal parts heart and horror. The idea came from a thought I had, a memory of childhood. Remember when you were a little kid, you lay in the grass, or you just be in a park or whatever, and you look up in the sky, and you see a cloud. And we all did this. You say, oh, that looks like a hammer, a dog, a face, whatever it was. And my what if was like, what would happen if a little boy looked up in the clouds and realized that for the last 2 weeks, it was always the same face staring back at him? So that was the original idea. And then I pictured a moment outside of this school, because I direct movies and write movies. Most of my career is actually that. I think in terms of like scenes sometimes or trailers, I thought, oh, here's a scene where here's this little boy Christopher, and he's outside of his school, and the last of the school buses drive away, and he's sitting here reading his book because he's dyslexic and he's struggling to learn to read because he doesn't want to let his mother Kate down. So he's reading his book, and the shadow cuts across the page, and he stops. He looks up, and there's the cloud face. But it's not small anymore, it's as big as the sky. And Christopher, the little 7.5-year-old boy, says, "Hello? Can you hear me?" And there's a thunderclap in the distance. When I do the movie, it'll be that speaker. And then it could be a coincidence. So Christopher says, "If you can hear me, blink your left eye." And the cloud goes like this, and then floats away. That was the original idea I had. I had that idea, and I had the title Imaginary Friend. That is all I knew. And off and on over the last 10 years, whenever I wasn't busy doing either like a movie project or sort of, I got married 9 years ago. We've had 2 children since. So I always came back because I had to know what was behind that face. I had to know what was in those clouds. So I spent this time falling in the cloud, metaphorically and quite literally in this book. So, as anyone knows who writes, you think of a moment and you think, okay, but what happens next? So after this moment when Christopher's outside of his school, he follows this cloud into a place called the Mission Street Woods, where a little boy named David Olson, who we see in the prologue, he wanders into the Mission Street Woods 50 years ago. And this is what happens to Christopher in the woods. I will share this chapter with you, and you can ask me any question about anything I've ever done. Whether it's, and I'll list a couple of things in case you don't know. I did the screenplay for the movie Rent. All right. No day but today. All right, my young friend. I co-wrote the screenplay for the live-action Beauty and the Beast that came out. I directed the Wallflower movie based on my book. I directed Wonder. I co-created a show called Jericho for CBS years ago, which was my tribute to Stephen King's The Stand, which is the favorite book. He's my favorite writer of all time, and that is my favorite book of his. And so, ask me anything. And next year I'm going to be directing, if all goes according to plan, so far so good. If you know the Broadway musical with Dear Evan Hansen, we're doing a movie of it. I'm going to direct that next year. So here's to hoping that on May I'll be going action, and Ben Platt will be singing. So that is what I hope. So ask me anything about film, writing, books, anything. I'm here. I'm in the best mood of my life. This is pretty amazing. So here we go. So here's, by the way, it's the worst total setup for a scary chapter ever. You're supposed to be scared. This is probably going to be a disaster, but I'm in a bit of a mood. But here you go. Here is chapter 6, and I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 6. Christopher looked up. He couldn't see the cloud face anymore. That's how thick the trees were. He could still hear the rain, but not a drop fell to earth. The ground was still dry, cracked like old skin. It felt like the trees were a big umbrella, an umbrella keeping something safe. Christopher turned around. The hairs on his neck stood up. "Who's there?" he said. There was silence, a quiet, shallow breathing. It might have been the wind, but something was here. Christopher could feel it, like the way you know when someone's staring at you, the way he knew Jerry was a bad man long before his mother did. He heard a footstep. Christopher turned and saw that it was just a pine cone falling from a tree. Thump, thump, thump. It rolled down the ground and landed on the trail. The trail was covered by tree needles and a few twisted branches, but it was unmistakable, a trail worn into the earth by years of bikes and ramps and races, by kids taking shortcuts to the other side of town. But now it looked abandoned, like the construction fence outside had kept the kids away for months, maybe even years. There wasn't a pair of fresh footsteps on it, except one. You could see the imprint of a shoe in the dirt. Christopher walked over and put his little sneakers next to it. They were about the same size. It was a little kid's footprint. That's when he heard a little kid crying. Christopher looked down the trail, and he saw that the little kid tracks went on for a long, long time. The sound was coming from that direction, far away in the distance. "Hello? Are you okay?" Christopher yelled out. The crying got louder. Christopher's chest tightened, and a voice inside him told him to turn around, walk back to school, and wait for his mother. But the little kid was in trouble, so he ignored his fear and followed the footprints slowly at first, cautiously. He walked toward an old bridge. The footprints went through the water and came out on the other side. They were muddy now. The little kid must be close. Help me. Was that a voice? Was it the wind? Christopher picked up his pace. The little kid tracks led him past an old hollow log that was carved out like a big canoe. Christopher looked ahead of him. He saw no one. The voice must be the wind. It didn't make sense to him, but there was no other explanation because he saw nothing except the light. The light was far down the trail, bright and blue, the place where the crying was. Christopher began walking toward it to help the little kid. With every step, the light got bigger, and the space under the trees got wider, and pretty soon there were no trees above his head, because Christopher had reached the clearing. It stood in the center of the woods, a perfect circle of grassy fields. The trees were gone, and he could see the sky, but something was wrong. He'd gone into the woods a few minutes ago when it was day, but it was nighttime now. The sky was black, and the stars were shooting a lot more than usual, almost like fireworks. The moon was so big that it lit the clearing, a blue moon. Hello? Christopher called out. There was silence. No crying, no wind, no voice. Christopher looked around the clearing and saw nothing but the trail of footprints leading to the tree. It stood in the middle of the clearing, crooked like an old man's arthritic hand, reaching out of the earth like it was trying to pluck a bird from the sky. Christopher couldn't help himself. He followed the footsteps. He walked up to the tree and touched it, but it didn't feel like bark or wood. It felt like flesh. Christopher jumped back and it hit him suddenly. This horrible feeling that this was wrong. Everything was wrong. He shouldn't be here. He looked down to find the trail again. He had to get out of here. His mom would be so worried. He found the trail. He saw the little kid tracks, but there was something different about them now. There were handprints next to them, like the little kid was walking on all fours. Crack. Christopher turned around. Something had stepped on a branch. He could hear creatures waking up all around him, surrounding the clearing. Christopher didn't hesitate. He started to run. Following the trail out, he reached the edge of the clearing, back into the woods, but the minute he stepped into the trees, he stopped, because the trail was gone. He looked around for it, but the sky was getting darker. The clouds were covering the stars now, and the moon was shining through the cloud face like a pirate's good eye. Help me! Christopher called out to the cloud face, but the wind moved and the cloud covered the moon like a blanket. Christopher couldn't see. Oh God, please God. Christopher fell to his knees and started digging through the pine needles, frantic, looking for the trail underneath, this needle sticking to his palms. He could hear the little kid now, but it wasn't crying anymore. It was giggling. Christopher found the trail with his hands and began to crawl on all fours. Get out of here, faster, that's all he thought, faster. The giggling was closer now. Christopher started running. He moved so fast that he lost the trail. He ran in the darkness, past the trees. His legs buckled when he stumbled into the creek, past the Billy Goat Bridge. He fell and ripped up his knee, but he didn't care. He kept running at full sprint. He saw the light up ahead. This was it. He knew it, the street light. He'd somehow found the street again. The giggling was right behind him. Christopher ran faster toward the street, toward the light. He ran under the cover of the last tree, and he stopped when he realized he wasn't in the street. He was back in the clearing. The light was not the street light. It was the moon. Christopher looked around and could feel things staring at him. Creatures and animals, their eyes glowing, surrounding the clearing. The giggling was closer, louder. Christopher was surrounded. He had to get out of here, find a way out, find any way out. He ran to the tree. He began to climb the trees. The tree felt like flesh under his hands, like climbing arms instead of branches, but he ignored the feeling. He needed to get higher to see a way out. When he reached halfway up the tree, the clouds parted. The moon made the clearing glow, and Christopher saw it. On the other side of the clearing, hidden behind the leaves and bushes, it looked like a cave mouth, but it wasn't a cave. It was a tunnel, man-made, wood framed, with old train tracks in the ground running through it. Christopher realized what that meant. Train tracks led to stations, which led to towns. He could get out. He climbed down the arms of the tree. He reached the ground. He felt a presence in the woods, eyes on him, waiting for him to move in. Christopher ran. All of his might, all of his speed. He felt creatures behind him, but he couldn't see them. He reached the mouth and looked into the tunnel. The train tracks went through it like a rusty spine. He saw moonlight on the other side and escaped. Christopher ran into the tunnel. The wooden frames held up the walls and ceiling like a whale's ribcage, but the wood was old, dilapidated, and rotting, and the tunnel wasn't wide enough for a train to pass through it. What was this place? A covered bridge? A sewer? A cave? A mine. The word hit him like water. A Pennsylvania coal mine. He saw a movie about them in class. Miners using hand carts and rail tracks to bring out earth to burn. He ran deeper, racing to the moonlight on the other side. He looked down at the tracks to get better footing. That's when he saw the little kid footprints were back, and the giggling was back right behind him. The The moonlight faded ahead as the clouds played hide and seek. The whole world went black. He groped into the darkness, trying to find the walls to guide his way out. His feet scraped the tracks as he reached out like a blind man. He finally found something. He finally touched something in the dark. It was a little kid's hand. And then, at the end of the chapter, it's one word in the dead center of the page, one word per page. It says, Christopher was not seen or heard from for 6 days. So that's that chapter. So, as I said, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to tell you what happens next. Whatever you would like. It is such a pleasure to be here on this very wonderful day. And so, does anybody have any questions? Yes,
I have a question, Stephen. So, like the last pages that you just read, was that your design idea, or was it the publisher's idea?
That was my design idea. You know, it's funny. I'll tell a quick story about how I came to be, how it took me 12 years to write another book. When I was 12 years old, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a baseball player, but by the time I was 12, I was like, that's not going to happen. For many reasons. Anyway, so I said, but the only other thing I ever wanted to be my entire life was a writer. And when I was 12 years old, I went to my dad, who was the biggest reader I knew. And I said, Dad, I want to be a writer. What I meant was novelist, but I said writer. And he said, well, great writers are great readers. And then he left the room and to smoke a Marlboro Red and watch the hockey game. And so it was actually very good advice. He was trying to tell me to read more. But my 12-year-old brain didn't take it that way. I was like, all right, well, he's my hero. Everything he says is fact. So he knows I don't read all that much because I'm a very slow reader, and I still am. I read Stephen King, and I watch a lot of movies. Well, I guess I read movies. All right, I'll write movies. So that is why I chose a movie career. And then from that moment on, that's what I studied. So as the years went on, when I wrote the Bookshops Wallflower, it was I considered it to be something of a fluke, right? That's why it took me a long time to realize that maybe it wasn't, that maybe I could work in this form again. And when I wrote that, so dead center each, you know, when I look at a blank piece of paper, yes, I see that I should fill it with words, but I also, my director brain, my movie director brain takes over, and I see it almost like that's a book and that's a movie screen. So I see the white page very much like a movie screen. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting as a way to slow down the reader to just say, to make it feel a little more eerie. And I do a lot of design things in the book. I play around a lot with certain design and certain ways to do grammar, certain ways to do punctuation and different capital letters. And there are all these numerology clues and other types of clues and hidden messages within the prose. And that's all my director brain. I can't turn it off because all of my training, I've never taken a fiction writing class. All of my training is as a screenwriter and as a filmmaker. That's why. Yeah. Yes?
So you told us like the inspiration for Imaginary Friend. What was your like moment for Perks of Being a Wallflower?
So Perks of Being a Wallflower, when I was a senior in college, because I was in film school at USC, which I'm actually rather flattered that people paid a lot of money to like fake their way into. I was like, I didn't know my school was that great. You know what I mean? Wow, okay. Really, $500,000? Wow, you know. Okay. All right. So anyway, so I was a film student in my senior year. I really wanted to try to write a book because that was my first love. That was the original thing I wanted to do. So I started writing, and I wrote 72 pages, first-person narrative from a young man who's very, very angry. Who's much more in the tradition of a Catcher in the Rye than some of those kind of angry young men type of books, which is not me. I'm not an angry person. And so it never felt authentic. I was just like I was mimicking heroes and stuff like that. So I was like, and then I got to this one line. And the kid goes, well, I guess it's one of the perks of being a wallflower. And I stopped and I went, okay. And I was 21 years old. And I said, that's it. I wrote 72 pages to get to those 6 words. And it was worth every page. So that was the beginning. And then I thought about it. So the angry kid went away. And I was like, who is this wallflower? And I started thinking about him and his older friends, and the tunnel, the Fort Pitt Tunnel in Pittsburgh where I grew up, and his aunts, and I'm thinking about all these things, but I didn't know how to do it. So it was more of like a character as a feeling. And then meanwhile, so I thought about it, I tried a screenplay 3 times, it never worked, because I didn't have the voice yet, I didn't have my way in. So what happened was, meanwhile, I had another idea that I call Letters from a Friend. And what I was going to do was I was going to write a bunch of letters from a high school kid and claim that this high school kid picked me out of a phone book and has been writing me letters all these years, and these were his best letters. Because I thought it might lend more credence to some of the themes and some of the issues that I wanted to tackle. So what happened was, after a very, very, very painful breakup, when I was 26 years old, so as many years, 5 years later, I woke up, it was a Saturday morning, and I basically went, the minute that I put this idea with this idea, and I just wrote, and I wrote, "Dear friend, I'm writing to you because she said that you listen and understand and didn't try to stick to that person." And it was like an instant moment of inspiration. I'll never forget it as long as I live. By the end of that day, I had written the first 2 letters. They're basically verbatim what is published. It took me a month to write the first half. I took 5 months off because I had to finish a movie project and because I was becoming slightly insane. Writing all the time. And I took 5 months off, and I wrote for 6 more weeks at the first draft, 3 weeks for the second draft, 3 weeks for the third draft, and a couple of copy edits, and that's what you read. That was the moment of inspiration. So there were all those along the way, and it led me, and if there are any writers in the room, I'm happy to share a very, very helpful exercise to help you get in touch with like maybe your best idea, or maybe find your best idea by combining 2 others, is that sometimes it takes those 2 pieces together to make the whole. So yeah, very, very, and if you had told me when I was sitting in my single room on 108th Street and between Broadway and Amsterdam, that I would be talking about that thing that I was writing that day 24 years later, with 5 million copies worldwide, I would have said you were insane. But here we are. So thank you for your question. I appreciate it very much. Well, this is a wonderful evening. Oh, yes.
So I know that you said all of your dreams in like movies. So do you prefer writing screenplays to write a novel, or
No, not even close. One of my regrets in life, but I don't have a lot of them, but one of my regrets in life is not that I went to film school. I actually love making movies. It's really fun, and I do like writing screenplays. My regret is after I wrote the Bookshops and Wallflower, like I said earlier, I kind of felt like it was a little bit of a fluke. You know, I was like, well, I'm trained in this thing, I can't do this thing. And I saw it almost like as a 213-page monologue from Charlie. If I had a time machine, I would go back to 1999, right around like April, and I would say, hey, you're about to spend the next 10 years of your life rewriting a lot of things for Hollywood. And even though it's lovely to make a living and it's lovely to learn from each script, you're wasting your time a little bit. Like, you should write another book, because readers will respond to what you just did. And I didn't know that at the time. I really didn't. It took me years of just receiving letters and people and meeting people kind of out on tour and things like that to realize that I had done something special, you know. And so yeah, I greatly prefer novels. They're much more free. The process is, I love to go inside and explore what characters feel. You know, I really enjoy that. And a screenplay has to be so literal. It is just what you see. And in order to evoke the amount of emotion that I'm able to do with books, with movies, the amount of trickery it takes to even get close is very, very difficult. So yeah, novels are much more fun for me. Yes?
Was there anything I know that you found surprising about adapting your own book as a screenplay or directing it versus adapting someone else's work?
Yeah, well, I've really done, you know, and I will compare Perks to Wonder, because, you know, Rent, when I did the Rent screenplay of Beauty and the Beast, other people directed it, and so they made all the final decisions. Like, you know, some of them I agree with and I thought were amazing, inspired, and some of them I was like, well, why did you know, I was like writing emails, please put that scene back in and explain everything. Okay, you know. But anyway, so I'll just say Perks and Wonder. Here it is. So Wonder was a much more enjoyable experience than Perks, because I had R.J. Palacio, And I revere authors. I couldn't love them more. And RJ, I love her book so much that I've considered it an honor to spend a year of my life trying to figure out a way to help ensure that book's legacy. You know, we all know great books that are made into horrendous movies. It's almost like it's like a blight against it, and it's heartbreaking. When a great book is turned into a terrible movie, it's like a betrayal. And because that book is so important, I said, you know, my goal was like, I'm going to do this right. Hollywood's going to give me like $25 million to make the most amazing book commercial ever for this book, and I want it in every fifth grade classroom in the world, right? So that was my goal. The process of adapting my own, the pressure that I felt to like, it was harder to let go. It was harder to make decisions. It was harder to see it clearly. Like, I can't tell you, and even in my early screenplays, what we shot, every scene between Charlie and Sam was like wrenching. And then it was through editing that I was like, my editor, Mary Jo Markey, who's a brilliant woman, said, Stephen, basically, not every song can be chorus. Like, there's verse and there's chorus and there's bridge and there's intro and outro and coda. You have to just, it's okay. Not every scene can be the scene. And it took me a while to learn that. That said, what I did love about personally Wallflower, making the movie was, with the book, it was all inside me. And it was so great to just say, hey Logan, you're Charlie now. Hey Emma, you're Sam forever. Hey Ezra, you're Patrick. And just let it all go. And just share in this. And when I was on set, if someone wanted to try a line, it was wonderful. I was like, do it. It was my book, but it was our movie. And it didn't have to be my way. I didn't care about that because I already had it my way one time. So I don't need to have it my way twice. And so the exploration of it was really fun. But the kind of, for me, the proof was in the pudding process-wise. When I made Perks, I'd say there were like 23 minutes of deleted scenes, you know, and there are tons of more footage of just scenes that I just thinned out with Mary Jo's help and my producer's help. And there were 4 minutes of deleted scenes from the movie. You know, I learned, okay, yeah, it can't be this, including one, I don't know if you know the book Wonder, it's a beautiful book. And there's this one scene, you know, I won't spoil it because there might be some people here that don't know the story. I'd actually have to spoil the big plot points if I want to. But anyway, so yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yes?
What can you tell us about the Four Corners of Nowhere?
Oh my God, the Four Corners of Nowhere.
Oh wait, I
Deep cut.
trying to look up just anything about it.
Anything
And
about it.
book, and I got like 1 page.
Yeah, so the Four Corners of Nowhere was the very first very first feature film that I wrote and directed. I went to college at USC, like I said, and my senior year, 2 very important things happened. The first thing was, I wrote a screenplay called Everything Divided that won all these like student awards and stuff like that. And so Hollywood, you know, with producers and agents and all these studios, they asked to read it, right? And so this is pre-internet. You know, I graduated in '92. So I drove it all over town on my little beat up like Geo Metro XFI. And I had in actual physical copies. I remember with Imaginary actually I had it notarized. So I drove it all over town and I got, out of 30 inquiries, I got 5 rejections, formal rejections, which I didn't know at the time was like fantastic. And I remember saying to, I made 2 contacts in film school, and one of them said, oh Steve, you're batting 1,000, right? And I said, well, in that case, I think I want to leave Hollywood and go make my own movie. Because I didn't want to wait. I was very impatient. So that was a very, very important event. And also there's a guy named Nick Danko that I went to film school with, or USC with. He made a super 8mm feature film that I thought was the coolest thing. So my idea was, hey, why don't I write a movie, shoot it on Super 8 with my friends. They're all actors that want to get signed. I want to get an agent, so let's just make a movie. So in the summer of 1992, I began writing Four Corners of Nowhere. And it was the first thing that I ever wrote that felt like, I was like, I don't know, it's like I tapped into something I'd never quite got before. And every young writer has that moment where you're just struggling. You haven't found your voice yet, and then you find it. That was the first time I really found it. So by the end of that screenplay, the first draft, I said, you know, I think this is bigger than a Super 8 feature. So I raised about $48,000. And we shot it on Super 16mm. We did an optical blow up. And the amazing thing was, that movie got me my first agent, and got me into the Sundance Film Festival. We were in competition in 1995. That was the year a lot of big people had their very first movie. Danny Boyle had Shallow Grave. Bryan Singer had The Usual Suspects. I remember James Mangold had a movie called Heavy. Eddie Burns had Brothers Moon Mullen. It was a really cool class to be a part of. And it was wonderful to get into Sundance, but then it was a devastating experience to basically lose our shirts financially, because, there are many movies that don't really catch on, and mine was one. It was really tough. Basically what the movie was a post-collegiate Generation X comedy, just like it starts out very, very funny and satirical, and little by little, all the characters' emotions get revealed to them. I didn't realize that would become kind of what I did, that you think it's funny, no, it's not. I didn't know it was early days of figuring out that's what I really like to do. So yeah, that's the Four Corners of Nowhere. I would release it on DVD, and I would do it. The problem is this: we were young, and we had no idea what laws were. And, there's a bunch of collages that would basically cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to clear. Oh, wow, art department, you put the Beatles Revolver poster right there. Wow. And so someday, if I'm really rich, I'll be all right, I'll cut the checks. But until that happens, I can't. So that's